stream crossings. Studies have shown that if non-point source pollution from a logging job occurs, it will likely happen at a stream crossing. This is why it's so important to ensure proper BMPs are used whenever stream crossings are needed for a logging job or other forestry operation. BMPs can be used to meet the minimum standards that are required by the North Carolina Forest Practices Guidelines related to water quality. These performance standards are more commonly known as the FPGs and became required starting in January of 1990. There are 9 sections of the FPGs, with each one focusing on a different area of forestry operations. Section 0203 of the FPGs deals with stream crossings. A brief review of this section includes these requirements. If the situation allows, stream crossings should be avoided. Stream flow must not be obstructed. Do not use streams as skid trails or access roads. The stream banks and stream channel must be protected from damage and accelerated erosion. Sediment and runoff must be diverted away from the crossing location. And ground cover must be established within 10 working days of the initial soil disturbance. By meeting these minimum FPG standards and using BMPs during the process, stream crossings can be installed, used, and removed correctly while protecting our water quality from non-point source pollution. This video will summarize 3 basic types of stream crossings commonly used in forestry: bridge mats, culverts, and hard-surfaced low-water fords. But before we can look at the different types of crossings, we first need to figure out where to establish the stream crossing. Ideally, a stream crossing should be located to maximize the amount of land area that is reached by using that crossing. In other words, you should get the most bang for your buck with each stream crossing. Another way to think about it is to make as few crossings as is absolutely necessary. Doing so may mean having to skid logs or trees a little extra distance out of the woods, but many times this extra skidding distance makes up for the increased cost, time, and potential pollution risk that is involved with establishing another crossing. When scouting a good location for stream crossings, look for these characteristics: a narrow stream channel, a right angle approach across the stream, and firm ground for solid footing on each side of the stream. Also, it is usually best to locate the crossing in a place along the stream that is relatively flat. This is so runoff can be controlled around the approach areas to the crossing. When working in steep country, it's not always possible to find good flat ground to cross. In these cases, extra precautions and BMPs should be used to make sure the stream is protected from runoff at the crossing location. Once you've determined the best place to cross, it may be worthwhile to mark that spot with flagging, paint, or some other method. Communicate to your crew so they know where the crossing will be. That way there's no confusion or excuse for an equipment operator to say, "I didn't know that's where you wanted me to go across." If you're not sure where the best place is to locate a crossing on your job, ask for help. Each county has offices for the North Carolina Forest Service, the Soil and Water Conservation District, and the Natural Resources Conservation Service. Field staff from these public agencies can provide recommendations on the best location and type of crossing to use, and their advice is free. Bridge mats should be considered the first option whenever a stream or ditch crossing is needed. It just makes sense that if you keep the tractors, logs, and debris completely up and out of the stream, you can best protect water quality and the stream's structure. When setting bridge mats, place them on firm footing at a location that allows a right angle crossing. In some cases, it may be helpful to secure the bridge mats to nearby stumps or trees by using chains or cables. Doing so helps keep the mats in place and prevents them from sliding around during use. Carefully install the bridge mats so that no damage is done to the stream or ditch bank. Don't drive your equipment through the stream to install the bridge mats. And set the mats in place from one side, then adjust them into proper position. One very important thing to remember: don't leave a center gap. The area in the middle between the mats should always be covered up. This is necessary to keep soil, debris, and mud from falling down into the water. If the center gap is not covered, the benefits of using bridge mats go down the drain. While it is best to use a third bridge mat to fill in the center gap, other less expensive options can be successfully used. Some ideas include delimbed logs, homemade panels of wood or steel, or perhaps even an old delimbing gate that has been covered with steel sheeting. Anything sturdy enough can be used to fill in that center gap. The key is to keep debris, dirt, and mud from getting into the water. When using bridge mats, check the crossing periodically and look for shifting or movement of the mats side to side. Make sure there are no gaps that could allow debris to slip through. Remove excess debris or mud so it doesn't slide over the edges. And examine the condition of bumper trees or tie-down trees. Before you remove the mats, be sure that any work that requires equipment to be used on the other side of the stream is already complete. This may include putting in water bars, turnouts, sediment traps, or seeding an area for stabilization. Culverts have been used for many years to cross streams. Unfortunately, often the culverts are not installed properly and result in poor water quality in aquatic habitat conditions. In cases where the culvert was too small or not properly stabilized, they usually blow out. This produces a flash flood of water, mud, and debris that destroys the conditions downstream of that crossing. Culverts can be used effectively if properly sized and installed to allow for the heavy water runoff that occurs from rainstorms. Culverts can be used at locations where bridge mat crossings may not be practical, or in cases where a permanent crossing of a small stream is needed. Use these factors to find a suitable culvert crossing location: a narrow section of the stream channel, solid footing on each stream bank, a right angle alignment to avoid installing a culvert in a stream bend or road curve, and lastly, pick a location that provides the most property access. This allows you to get the most bang for your buck and avoid having to install multiple crossings. When sizing up the right culvert to use, you must consider not only the pipe diameter, but also its length. The culvert diameter should be large enough to carry the expected flow of water during a rainstorm. Another important factor for culvert diameters is the watershed area upstream of the crossing location. If there is a large land area that drains into your stream, then the crossing will need to handle the much higher volume of water that will flow after rainstorms. This may require using multiple culverts for a single crossing, or using larger diameter pipe than you first thought. When determining culvert length, be sure to include enough pipe to extend at least 4 feet beyond the edges of your road or skid trail fill material. This is important to prevent the water from washing away the fill material and to keep the crossing stable. If the culvert is too short, the culvert ends will become clogged with soil, which increases the chance of a blowout. This video is not intended to describe exactly what size culvert to use for every situation. Each site is unique, and as such should be evaluated for its own set of stream characteristics. Advice on proper culvert sizing is available from several different sources, including those already mentioned in this video. If you don't feel comfortable making the decision on your own, obtain assistance for selecting the right culvert pipe size. After deciding the size and location of the culvert crossing, installing them is fairly straightforward. Be sure to determine right from the start if the culvert is intended for temporary or permanent use. For temporary culverts, it is generally acceptable to place the pipe directly on the bottom of the stream channel. Position the pipe approximately in the center of the heaviest water flow. However, if the culvert is permanent, some research studies have shown that the base of the culvert should be partially buried into the bottom of the stream channel. Doing this allows for fish and other aquatic organisms to more easily maneuver through the culvert. If a culvert is to be partially buried into the stream bottom, 2 issues need to be addressed. First, a larger diameter culvert is needed, since the base of the pipe will not be open and available for stream flow. Second, any disturbance in the stream channel during installation will cause sediment and silt to be churned up, which could create potential water quality risks. After the culvert is laid in the stream or ditch channel, temporarily secure the pipe in place to keep it from rolling back and forth as dirt or rock is dumped on top of it. When adding dirt or rock fill material over the top of the culvert, periodically pack down the materials to make sure there are no air pockets that could cave in later. The amount or thickness of fill material to place over the top of the culvert is recommended to be at least 1 foot thick after being packed down. This thickness will need to be increased in some cases when a larger diameter pipe is used, or if soft fill material doesn't provide strong enough support for the trucks or tractors. As the culvert is used, be careful to notice if the fill material is running down over the top of the culvert. Additional material may be needed to support the traffic, or to keep the pipe from being crushed in or displaced. It may be useful to hang flagging or set stakes to mark the ends of the culvert pipe, so drivers and equipment operators know the culvert's location. Knowing this can keep them from accidentally damaging the culvert ends, which could lead to stream blockages or a destroyed culvert. When removing a culvert, be careful not to damage the stream bank or stream channel during the excavation work. The idea is to leave the stream channel in the same shape and form as it was before the culvert was installed. Stabilize any of the removed fill material so that it won't wash down into the stream after the logging job is finished. Finally, stabilize the entire stream crossing location and establish suitable ground cover to prevent accelerated erosion into the water. A hard-surfaced low-water crossing, commonly called a ford, can be used for road access through a suitable stream. As you might imagine, this type of crossing is the least preferred, since it requires vehicles to drive directly through the water. Doing so allows any built-up dirt, mud, and other residue to get into the water. However, when done right, ford crossings can be a low-maintenance and permanent solution to a difficult stream crossing location. Some examples of when a ford crossing may be suitable include a stream that has an existing rocky bottom surface, areas with active populations of beavers that could dam up a culvert pipe crossing, or streams that are too wide for bridge mats or multiple culvert pipes. It is important at this point to make special mention of when not to use ford crossings. Do not use ford crossings for skid trails. They are only recommended for vehicle crossings on access roads. If fords were to be used for skid trails, a tremendous volume of soil and debris will get dragged into the water, which will degrade water quality. It's best to locate fords at a place that allows a vehicle to move straight across at right angles to the stream. Avoid installing fords in the bends of streams or within the curves of roads. And as always, it's recommended to locate the crossing at a point that will provide the most efficient access to the land without having to make multiple crossings later on. The approachways to the ford should gently slope down towards the ford crossing. Apply ample amounts of stone or rock on each side of the crossing. It is suggested to lay down at least 100 feet of rock on each approachway. This allows any mud, dirt, or other debris to get cleaned off the vehicle's tires before driving through the water. Install geotextiles on the ground surface prior to spreading the stone. This fabric keeps the stone from getting compacted into the soil and mixed with mud. When installing and using fords, it is very important to maintain the natural flow of water within the stream channel. Allowing adequate water flow is necessary to avoid unintended water backups. In addition, it provides for the continued movement of fish and other aquatic organisms. Clean your equipment off before conducting any work in the water or stream channel. Keep mud, grease, fuel, and other potential contamination out of the water during the installation process. Constructing a ford crossing demands careful attention to details. Tips to successfully build a ford include the following. For safety and environmental concerns, perform all work during periods of low water. Do not attempt to work in the stream during heavy water flow. Lay down geotextile or filter fabric on the stream bottom before placing any stone or rock materials. This fabric is needed to keep the rock and stone from getting compressed into the wet silt of the stream bottom. Use stone that is large enough to meet your needs, but vary the sizes so the pieces can lock together and won't simply roll around like marbles underneath the tires of passing vehicles. Spread the rock or stone as level across the stream as possible. Avoid the creation of a dip or V-notch in the ford crossing. By keeping a level crossing, this minimizes potential erosion or disturbance to the stream channel. When grading the approachways down to the crossing, keep in mind which direction log trucks may be traveling through the stream. On the outbound side, where loaded trucks exit out of the stream, you may want to keep the road grade flatter so the trucks can more easily pull across the wet and slippery rocks. The inbound side of the crossing can be graded a little steeper if necessary, since the log trucks will be empty upon their crossing through the stream. Above all, remember, do not block the flow of water when constructing your ford crossing. Now that the crossing is in place, driving through it should be no problem, right? Well, to protect the long-term investment of the crossing and the long-term water quality of the stream, there are a few things to do when using a ford crossing. First and foremost is safety. Only drive through a ford during low water conditions, and only use the right kind of vehicle. Never drive through a ford crossing that is either unfamiliar to you or has a heavy water flow, or when operating a vehicle that is not appropriate for that crossing. Even a few inches of flowing water can quickly sweep away a large vehicle. The second key to using a ford is simple. Go slow. There's no point in tearing through the crossing like what we see on TV commercials advertising for pickup trucks. Doing so only degrades the crossing structure and increases the chance of erosion or water quality problems in the future. A third thing to consider when driving through the ford is to stagger the vehicle's tire pathway each time through the stream. In other words, don't drive in the same tire tracks at the crossing. As always, occasionally inspect the crossing to make sure the structure is holding up under the pressure of passing vehicles. Take corrective actions immediately if accelerated erosion or runoff is creating a water quality problem, and make sure the ford is not blocking the flow of water in the stream channel. Be sure to stabilize the approachways and, if needed, the stream banks after you are finished using the ford crossing. The best BMP for a stream crossing is to avoid having one altogether, but of course that's not always practical. When locating a suitable spot for a stream crossing, remember the key elements to look for: a narrow section of stream channel, solid footing on each stream bank, right angle alignment, and efficient side access. Remember, bridge mats can be used again and again and are suitable for not only stream crossings but also DOT highway ditches and for use at logging decks. Culverts should be sized according to the watershed land area upstream of the crossing location. Assistance with determining this correct pipe size is available from several public and private groups. Minimize the amount of stream channel disturbance when installing and removing the culvert, and always be sure to have enough fill material over the top of the pipe to prevent failures. Ford crossings are suitable for truck road access, but not for skid trails. Install and use fords only during safe water and vehicle conditions. Remember to divert any runoff away from the crossing location, since this is an easy pathway for mud, debris, and other non-point source pollution to get into the water over time. By following the standards outlined in the 9 FPGs and the appropriate BMPs, you can protect our water resources easily and effectively when conducting forestry operations. Forest management is the preferred land use for protecting water quality. Let's all do our part to make sure forestry remains an important environmental and economic activity.